When it comes to home theater, there's nothing quite like having a huge immersive image from a projection. But the larger screen you go with, the more lumen output that your projector needs. Epson sent me their QL7000, and this thing is a light cannon. It produces 10,000 lumens output, and I was getting about 380 nits of brightness on my 150-inch diagonal Seymour Center Stage XD screen. So in this video, I want to share with you my experience of having the Epson QB7000 here in my dedicated theater room over the past several months. So the first thing, let's get it out of the way. This projector is not inexpensive. You're talking over $30,000 for the projector, and then you also have to purchase the lens, which is separate. Epson sent me their wide-angle lens because I don't have a massive room. This room is only 13 feet wide, 19 feet deep. The projector is outside of this room, so it's about a foot back from the edge of the wall on the rear. But my front cabinet is about 4 feet into the room. So in total, I've got about 16 to 16 and a half feet of throw distance. And even with that wide-angle lens, it still wasn't basically back far enough to project a 150-inch screen. The 16 by 9 kind of spilled above and below my screen, but nonetheless, I want to share with you my experience here in this room. So the first thing you'll notice when you fire this thing up is it is crazy, crazy bright. I've never experienced anything quite like that in my theater room. Most of the projectors that I've owned have been under 3,000 lumens. So to go from like 2,500 or 27 or 2,800 lumens all the way up to 10,000, it was wild, man. It is crazy, crazy bright. One of the scenes I love using is from Jennifer Gala. She's got a YouTube channel, great content. And I remember firing that up for the first time, and the beginning starts off like a dark black screen and you've got some white text, and then all of a sudden this big huge white sheet of just brightness comes across the screen, and I found my eyes kind of squinting because it was just crazy, insane bright. So where the Epson really excels is if you want to go with a massive screen. If you want to do a 200-inch screen, 220, 250, probably even a 300-inch screen, this thing will absolutely provide enough light output to really achieve those proper HDR levels. Now I want to dive in the pros and cons of this projector because truthfully there's no projector that's perfect. No projector has every checkbox. It does 3D, it's super bright, it's got amazing high contrast, it's got deep black levels. There's very few projectors out there like that. Now Christie gets really close, but you're talking $450,000 without a lens for the Christie Eclipse. So for most people, that will never be attainable. So let's come back to something that possibly could be attainable, which is the Epson QL and QB series. Now when watching regular everyday content, things like Dune 2, watching Top Gun Maverick, anything that has a really bright scene, that is really where the Epson excels. Also, any kind of animation with vivid colors, the Epson just really shines in those types of movie content. Now the one area it did struggle with is in the deep blacks. Most of the time when watching content, you know, I'm used to a JVC projector. Now JVC is known for having just those really deep black levels. If you've got an OLED TV, you're used to those really deep inky black levels because an OLED can actually turn off all of those pixels. Well, in a projector, you can't do that. And when you've got a massive amount of light output, it's really difficult to get those blacks really deep. And so I found in a lot of content, especially in the darker scenes, the blacks were elevated quite a bit. Now Epson does have a few things that you can enable inside the menu, like dynamic contrast, and those tend to help a little bit, but truthfully, it was still less than what I would love to have seen. I thoroughly enjoy when a projector can have those really, really dark blacks. And so again, that's just what I'm used to. So those types of scenes kind of pulled me out of that movie experience because my brain would immediately notice that's gray instead of black. Now, with that being said, in scenes that have both really bright content and dark areas, here's the interesting thing. Because it was so bright, during those scenes, my brain didn't really notice that the black level was elevated. And I think because there's just so much contrast between the really bright area and the dark area on that screen, that your brain is kind of tricked that the black levels are darker than they are. Again, it would be in dark scenes like in A Quiet Place. During that scene, you know, she's standing over here kind of by herself and she's by the staircase, and to the left of her is all this dark area. Well, again, because that whole scene was dark, my brain really noticed that this black floor was elevated, and there's not a lot that you can do to make that darker. So if you're the type that really, really needs those deep, dark black levels, the QB7000 probably isn't the best fit. But if you're looking for something that is just crazy bright, has a beautiful image and great color saturation, man, it's pretty exciting. Now, in your theater room, if you want to utilize a CinemaScope screen, you know that there's going to be different movies that you watch. Some are going to be in 16:9. Some are going to be in 2.35:1 or 2:4:1. So there's various aspect ratios that you have to kind of compete with and you have to adjust to if you want it to fit your screen as best as possible. So Epson has a feature called lens memory. And the lens memory is great because basically what you're doing is, let's say you play a 16:9 content. So on my screen, 16:9 isn't as wide as 2.35. So I'm going to have gray bars on the left and on the right. So in the Epson, what you would do is you would zoom out to where the top and the bottom fit the screen. Then you've got gray bars on left and right. This is called constant image height. That's how I like to have it set up in my theater room. So when I'm watching 2.35:1, gray bars. If I'm watching something even smaller, 4:3, that's almost a square, I'd have a lot of gray bars left and right. But when I'm watching 2.35:1 or 2.4:1, I don't have any gray bars top or bottom, and it fills the entire edge, edge to edge, top to bottom of my 2.35:1 screen. So with 2.35:1 content or 2.40:1 content, you're going to get gray bars on the top and the bottom. That's what you see on your TV. So with the projector, you would zoom in on the Epson until the edges get all the way to the left and the right side. And then you use lens shift. And so I love that on the QB7000. So it literally has a mechanical drive in there that can shift this image up and down as well as left and right. So it has vertical lens shift as well as horizontal lens shift. And so you position the lens up and down until it aligns with the top and the bottom and the left and the right. And then you go into the menu under the lens memory and you save that as a preset. And so I've saved two presets. I use a 16:9 preset and I use a 2.35:1 aspect or preset. So one thing I really appreciate with the Epson in that is it does this very, very fast. With my JVC, it probably takes 10 or 12 seconds to change from, say, 16:9 preset to a 2.35:1 preset. With the Epson, we're talking like 2 or 3 seconds. And once it makes that change, it backs you out of the menu, which is just a very convenient feature. And while we're talking about the lens memory, another thing that I found a little difficult is you cannot tell which one of the presets is currently selected. So let's say I've got 16:9 preset up here, 2.35:1 preset down here. Let's say I select the 2.35:1 preset. And let's say I watch a movie in 2.35:1, I shut it down. So tomorrow I come in here and I pull up I turn on the projector, go into the menu. There's no indication of which one is currently selected. And so sometimes I thought I was on a 2.35:1 preset, and so I chose the 16:9, and it basically did the same thing because it was already on that preset. So I'd love to see even just a button or a highlight of letting you know, okay, you're using, like right now, it's in 16:9 preset, or maybe it's in your 2.35:1 preset, something visually that you can see and know which one is being selected at that current moment in time. Now, having 10,000 lumens output is amazing, but one thing you need to take in consideration when purchasing this projector is, do you have adequate ventilation where it's going to be installed? For many years, I've had my projector outside this room. It's in a very open space. It's basically inside a part of a closet, but that wall has been taken down. So there's a huge amount of space left and right, and there's probably about 4 feet above this. What it doesn't have a lot of space is in front of it, in behind it, and to the right side of it. So when I first got the Epson in there, fired it up, and I'm watching some content, and all of a sudden, man, I start hearing the Epson, like it's really loud. And I'm going, my goodness, why is this thing so loud? Short version of that, it was beginning to build up heat, and so the fan was kicking into like ultra high mode to keep it cool. And what I found I have to do is when I'm watching it in the theater room, I have to open up, there's a door, like a pantry door, to a closet, and it sits on top of that closet. I have to open up that door to let that exhaust out, because on the right side is where the exhaust is. And so I found that with the door closed, the air was coming out of the exhaust, hitting the door and firing right back, and it was too much heat generating. It wasn't ventilating up. So keep that in mind. If you're going to be installing the Epson QB7000, make sure you've got adequate space left and right so that can adequately have some airflow in there, or maybe put some kind of cooling system, but definitely take that into consideration if you're going to be installing this projector in your theater room. Now, another thing to keep in mind is this projector is huge. I mean, like, it is massive. If you're used to a very small projector, when you get this thing in your home, you're going to be like, holy cow, like this is a big, massive projector. So again, just check out the website, make sure that you've got adequate dimensions for your space, as well as the recommended throw distance. Now, we talked about the lenses earlier. They sent me the wide angle lens. So the good thing with having a removable lens is you get the opportunity to really change how this unit is installed. And what I mean by that is, let's say I buy that projector for this room, but then I move homes, and maybe that next theater room I have a larger room. Well, maybe that wide angle lens isn't going to do it for a much deeper room. Maybe my room's 25 feet or 30 feet. And so they offer 2 or 3 other, I think it's 3 other lenses. So those are pretty much a longer throw. So if you've got a really deep room, you don't have to buy a new projector. You just replace the lens, and that gives you more flexibility. Now, my screen is a Seymour Center Stage XD. So Seymour says it measures like around 1.0 gain, which means it's not adding any more brightness and it's not taking away. Most people that I've seen third party that have been able to measure the screen either measure it at 0.9 and some as low as 0.8. So in other words, I'm losing a little bit of output on that. So where I'm going with this is, although I have to return the Epson, I know when I go back to my JVC NZ800, I have a feeling, of course, I'm going to love the black levels, but I'm going to be like, man, I miss having that 10,000 lumens. And so one thing I'm probably going to want to do is upgrade my screen to something with a higher gain, like a 1.2 or a 1.3, to gain more brightness from it. So I'm losing a decent amount of light output from what it can actually produce. I promise you, there was at no time I ever thought, man, if I only had another 1,000 lumens from this joker. This thing is crazy bright. And like I said, the colors are beautiful on it. It's really, really nice. Skin tones seem nice. I'm not a videophile by any means, but just from an average consumer, man, what I was seeing, I really enjoyed it. Again, the main thing that pulled me out of sometimes the movie watching experience is just having the elevated black floor. One more thing I'll mention too that I noticed, there were times when the camera, I'd be watching a movie and there was a very slow pan. I mean, a really slow pan. And if there were vertical lines, maybe a wall or just something that was vertical, you would see kind of some choppiness in that. And so that motion wasn't really smooth. Now I did go into the Epson and I turned on like frame interpolation, and it seemed to help out a little bit, but it still was kind of jaggy. It wasn't until I installed my MavVR Envy Extreme and used Motion AI that it really smoothed out that. So I don't think this projector has amazing motion interpolation. And so again, if you're looking at something like maybe sports where there's a lot of movement, again, you may actually notice that in the image quality. Now overall, I have absolutely no problem recommending this projector. It's a beast. Man, if you got a massive screen, you're really going to enjoy this. Now, if you have a much smaller screen, like let's say a 100-inch or maybe a 120-inch screen, I don't think you need and I just realized this whole time I think I've been calling it the QB7000, it's the QL7000, forgive me on that. So I don't think you absolutely need the QL7000. You could step down to the QL3000 or possibly even the QB1000. Both of those still have an incredible amount of brightness, but just not quite 10,000 lumens. Again, where this projector really excels is on a massive screen. I wish I had a bigger screen to test it on, but there's no doubt with 10,000 lumens, you could get an amazing image on easily a 200-inch or larger screen. Well guys, I'll provide a link to the Epson QL7000 along with the lenses that they sell down in the description below. Let me know if you have any comments, any thoughts on the Epson series. I think Epson's doing a great job, especially providing a really high-end projector with massive light output. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. God bless, and I'll catch you in the next one.